May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive. This episode of May the Life Force Be With You is brought to you by Moment Company and the Moment Pebble. The Moment Pebble is a beautiful, natural stone, light-guided breathing device and is a unique gift for someone who needs that gentle reminder to stop and take a break, to take moments throughout their busy day and to practice mindfulness. Just head over to momentcompany.co, that's momentcompany.co, and enter the code LIFEFORCE at checkout to receive an exclusive 10% podcast discount. Hi.
Hi.
Kahreela, we're in different parts of the world again. Tell everybody where you are today.
I am in Cairo. I'm live from Cairo.
I'm live from Tintinbar, New South Wales. Wow. You sent me a picture. I just got to share with everybody. You sent me a picture last night of Cairo and your view, and the pyramids are just incredible, aren't they? I'm lucky that I've been, and they're just, they're something special.
You know, they're so close to our hotel. Like that view is from the roof of our hotel, and they have an aura or a life force energy that is actually quite similar to mountains. I was like looking at them this morning. And
that was my first thought.
The energy coming off these things, like these are alive. You know, like you're in the presence of something when you're that close to the pyramids. It's amazing.
Oh, 100%. I definitely felt that even just in your photograph. My first thought was mountains. I understand why you're there, and I could feel the energy just even from that photograph, and they're just so incredible, just the size, the scale, and of course the curiousness about how they exist in the first place and the mythology and everything that goes behind it is fascinating. I've always been fascinated by Egypt and the pyramids.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of mystery around. I feel like I was actually saying to somebody that to me, like Tantra is the mystery, you know? And I feel like anything that has a lot of mystery by its nature of being mysterious, has a lot of life force energy. And so I think the mystery, mystery seems to get humanity's attention. And I think that our attention is very life force giving, actually. And so when we're curious about something, when we're engaged with something from that place of mystery, we also imbue a lot of life force energy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do, yeah. I mean, sometimes you say, you give life and you give energy to something, you give oxygen to, right? And that can be good and bad. So, giving attention to things that are might be more negative or, are not going so well, it kind of creates its own energy and momentum behind it, where I always say, if you want to shut something down, stop talking about it. It loses its energy, it loses its momentum, and it naturally kind of dies off. And so it kind of figures that the things you revere most, the things that are talked about most, the things that are celebrated most, feel like they have their own power, and vice versa.
I love that you said celebrated, because I feel like celebration is to me, as we're doing this May the Life Force Be With You journey, I'm starting to understand that celebration is like a way of giving energy to something. And actually it's part of my intention for the new year is to do relationship, whether it's with pyramids or with other people, in celebration, or with myself, because it's life force giving to celebrate, I
love that. So is that
and
your
so
word?
Much celebration. So relationship and celebration is my new intention. That's what I want to explore. And one of the things, like, obviously I've only been here a few hours, and I have been to Egypt before, but I haven't been to the Arabic world for many years. And I just, being back here and being back in Egypt, one of the things we observed last night when we were at dinner is how, there's so much celebration in the people here, the way that they greet each other, we had a Sufi dancer welling round our table last night, and the music's so celebratory, and there's just this kind of pulse or rhythm in this culture that is about celebrating life and celebrating food and celebrating flavor, and it's amazing to be back in it. Actually, you realize how
contrasting,
kind of,
would that be
malnourished from celebration we are in the West sometimes, just certainly at the dinner table, I think. And so,
yeah, that makes, I can feel that. I can sense that. And so tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing over the next few days, and the celebration that you're taking people through.
So this journey is so, as I've talked about on the podcast before, land work is something that tends to come with a huge amount of resistance. And I have never had resistance like the Egyptian journey. I mean, me personally, and the whole trip falling apart, which is in another one of our episodes, the one with the pyramids, gotta have faith. But also everybody else, there were people from, two people came from Japan. Their airport was on fire. So,
oh my gosh,
they didn't.
Of course.
Their airport was on fire. We were getting text, and they were like, "We don't think we're going to make it because, there's been an earthquake, a plane crash, and a fire at the airport." And how they even got on a plane out of Tokyo is kind of beyond all of us.
That's a lot of resistance to overcome.
Yeah. And, we've had other people, we have somebody here who literally fell down an escalator really badly, nearly died, left her body, and the hospital thought she was going to die, and had, came out, survived it, but had brain damage. And the hospital was like, it's going to take you 2 years to recover. This was 8 weeks ago. And so, and she was like, I am going to Egypt. She was like, I'm going to Egypt. So they'd already booked Egypt. And she said that even when she was out of her body, she was like, I cannot die because I need to be in Egypt. Oh so me and her husband were like, she's holding on to Egypt, but neither of us thought she was going to make it. My guides were going, the door is still open for Egypt. And I was like, are they just telling her that? Because nothing, and she's here. She's here and she's well. And so and everybody's got a kind of story. It's not as if that's the most extreme, but everybody's had this pilgrimage to get here. So we're on the roof last night looking at those pyramids, just being like, we can't believe we're here. We actually can't believe we're here. All of us have passed through this crazy passage. And the reason I share that is because this journey is, it's about the power of belief. That's what my guide said about it from the beginning. They were like, and they said it a year ago when I was first tuning into Egypt. They were like, anybody that believes themselves there will be there. And
you tested that theory.
Yeah. Well, not through choice, but like it was like everybody literally had to do it on belief alone. That is how I would describe it. It was like getting here was like you weren't going to have any evidence. You were just going to have your own belief, which, you know, for me, the power to believe is deeply connected to life force energy, because my guides say it's to be alive with. And so to me, believing is like using your life force energy to create something, rather than using alchemy or chemistry or biology to create something. And I feel like that's source power. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that's the power of the source self. It's like the power of our own inner God is our power to believe. And that kind of, and then when you go to these places that have been believed in for so many thousands of years, like the pyramids, you know, when you fly into Cairo, you see the pyramids. When you fly from the UK, like these giant things that float, and it's like you could just feel how much belief energy has been given to them, and how much they are flowing, how much they will flow that energy back to you if you choose to connect to them in that intention.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't really answer what we were doing. We're going to the
pyramids. When you said about believe and that being alive effectively, and that being life force energy, the thing that came to me was that belief in self. And when you said source, I'm like, well, the source is you. So if you believe, because you can't have somebody else believe for you, it's something that is deeply personal. It is your traits, your belief systems, are your thought processes, are your stories, are your, who you live with, who you work with. Everything is wrapped up in your belief system. And that is what drives you. That is what gives you energy. That is what gives you the oomph to do things. That is what gives you a position in the world and an opinion on things and a desire to change things, if that is what you want to do. And whether it's small, big, it doesn't matter. It's driven by your own commitment to something that you believe. And that can only come from self. I know that people are, you get the brainwashing and you get the kind of, are people led? And lemming style these days? Does conspiracy theories online detract from people's core beliefs? We can go down that whole hole. I don't really want to, actually, but there are
let's not go down that hole.
But there are definitely counter arguments to what I'm saying. But I do believe that your beliefs, the stories that you tell yourself, you is what makes you uniquely you, is actually what you believe in. And that is what drives your energy. That is what gives you life force. That is what makes you uniquely the person that you are.
As you're speaking, I feel like it's what your belief is, what your life force is literally creating. Like what your life force is generating, and so that's why it's so important to make sure that your beliefs are yours and not the collectives, your families, I think without going too far down the rabbit hole, we do get influenced by things around us, and I think it's just so worth checking in. Like, is that actually my authentic truth? One of the things that happened in the sweat and sound ceremony we did on New Year,
I missed it.
I know, I got so emotional because really I was saying to Grazia that like that ceremony 2 years ago is kind of the reason May the Life Force Be With You exists now. And I was like, it births life force. I got really, really grateful and emotional to that particular ceremony and to you. But one of the things that was said by the guides in that ceremony is they were like, separation. We talk so much about separation consciousness in spirituality. And there's so much dedicated towards it. And they were just like, you understand that you can never be separated, right? Because you're part of the great whole. Like, you're part of the great cosmos. So the only thing you can actually be separated from is your own truth. And they were like, the only thing that you can actually have an experience of separation with is your own authenticity. And when you don't live your own truth, that is when you experience the deficits of separations, like anxiety and depression. Like, they were like, there is nowhere else it can exist other than within you and your own truth. And they were like, it is that simple. You just need to, there's so much for healing separation consciousness. And then, really all you have to do is live more authentically. Easier said than done because of our belief systems and our archetypes. But
the way that
just feel like that's what you just said. You know what I mean? In a different way and in a very beautiful way. That's exactly what you've just said about life force and beliefs, and it's all about being true to you. I don't know if this is I really want to ask you about the start of your year, and I feel like archetypes, when we talk about belief systems, archetypes and fairy stories and all of that is actually really influential on our belief system, probably more than the media, actually, from a shadow work point of view. So I'm really
people are going,
to hear,
how on earth did Kahreela get to fairy tales from that conversation? But maybe it is going back and connecting to the hieroglyphics in Egypt and storytelling in Egypt, and how some of those stories are still folklore and they're still kind of talked about now, and how some characters have longevity in kind of storytelling. And I went to an exhibition yesterday in Brisbane that was all about fairy tales, and you'd think, why on earth are a bunch of middle-aged women going to a fairy tale exhibition? But it was actually it was very thought-provoking and quite scary. I'm not sure I would take children, but some of these fairy tales have been around since Brothers Grimm. So Brothers Grimm was part of it, but it was even earlier than that. So it was just fairy tales full stop. Starting from like the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, and talking about the origins of fairy tales, and looking at the importance, things like color. Why is the apple so red, and the inside of it so white, and so that red is that kind of sexuality and life force. So they had a little thing saying that's what the color red implies. So that's why the apples are red. And, it's a big part of the storytelling. Little Red Riding Hood, she's very sexualized actually. And, all these kind of things that came into each of the stories. And it's very much looking at the kind of maiden mother crone of women as well, and the part that women play in all the stories. So when you get to the crone, you're either the fairy godmother, but more likely you're the wicked witch, you're the evil stepmother, and you've got a very negative connotation. The younger beautiful ones are always the beautiful maidens who want to be a princess, that's their goal. But interestingly, they're saying that back in the 16th century in France, which is where some of the origins of the stories come from, there was no interclass marriage. So actually, the poor girl getting to be a princess was cutting through barriers about normalizing interclass relationships and interclass marriages. I'm like, I'd never actually thought of it that way. But actually, that's why it was originally there. These stories were there to break down kind of cultural perceptions of different class systems, of women and the role they play in society, of those people on the margins of society. You know, you banish them to the woods, and you notice there's always an enchanted forest. It's a wood, it's dark, but it also allows you to connect to nature. So what roles do characters like foxes and pigs and wolves play in the storytelling versus birds? And so it was beautifully done. It was really, really thought provoking. There was lots of reference to life force in the different elements around, you know, storytelling through nature, and just how important it was to use these tales to really kind of break down those societal norms of the, you know, many centuries ago. So yeah, and one thing I didn't know, and I'm going to ask you if you knew this, I didn't. Apparently, Snow White, you know, she's in a glass coffin, just waiting to be kissed by the prince to wake her up. Well, apparently, there's a version of the story which was the default version of the story, where the poisoned apple gets dislodged from her throat by fate. Someone shakes, you know, knocks the coffin, it dislodges it, and she wakes up on her own. The prince's kiss is only by design. That's by design. So there's by fate. She could still do it by a trick of fate, or there's two versions of it. So
I love that so much. That's amazing.
So it then led people to have a conversation around voyeurism, around fate, around, like, you know, it not always having to be a knight that rides in on a white horse or kisses the princess. So yeah, it was really interesting.
Oh, it sounds like fascinating, and
you would love it.
I know I would love it.
There's a whole thing as well around, you know, it's not just Brothers Grimm or Hans Christian Andersen, but it's also exploring the Middle East, and, you know, the different characters that are brought into those stories as well. So the Arabian Nights, or, you know, the Genie and the Lamp, there's Jasmine, there's all these kind of other ones that are culturally introducing children into different types of culture as well.
I mean, I think the stories are so important because I think they affect our belief systems so much more than we realize. You know, if you are, I guess an archetype is a collective belief system, hey? And if you are, like you say, getting older and associate age with the evil witch, you're going to struggle with aging, you know, as opposed to if you associate it with the fairy godmother. One of the things that I had a realization once was I realized that I was doing some shadow work, and I realized that my maiden, or my inner maiden, and my inner witch was so conditioned from fairy tales to be against each other that I was really struggling with living a spiritual life. Like, I had a belief out of that, that either you were going to be a princess that got married, or you were going to be a lonely old witch cat lady. And that these two couldn't exist together because there are so many fairy stories where those feminine archetypes are polarized against each other. Like, the feminine is the enemy to the own feminine. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's conditioned. Like, when I was tuning into it, I was like, that's everything I learned from every story that was told to me about my feminine archetypes. You know, there was never the witch saves the princess.
Or the queen doesn't save the princess, the young prince does. But so I actually took a picture of the because it took you through all the different parts of the stories, and obviously the end is happily ever after, right? They all end in happily ever after. So I just wanted to read you a little bit of this because I thought it was just beautiful. I took a photo of it. So it's the promise of happiness. So fairy tales are not bound by borders, social class, custom, religion, age, or time. They are products of our desire to consider the world around us from within the safe realm of fiction. Fairy tales come to meet us where we are as they shift and change to reflect the needs and wants of audiences. The hopefulness embodied in many fairy tales once functioned to alleviate the drudgery of daily life. They both entertained and imparted wisdom. The classic tales of Cinderella and Snow White promise better times, and if this was not possible, at least concluded with satisfactory, gruesome endings for the wicked. Because you think about it, the wicked always got their downfall as well. These stories were written at a time when women's autonomy and access to education were severely restricted, and according to the law, they were subordinate to their fathers or husbands. For early readers, happily ever after represented the institution of a marriage and a life of stability, free of strife and hardship. So then it goes on. When the Parisian aristocracy recorded these stories, with their ostentatious ballrooms and banquets, luxurious carriages, opulent dresses, expensive jewellery, impossible shoes and glass slippers, they evoked aspirational wealth, status and power. Marrying for love and between classes were risky topics for the time, which is not something that we kind of really embrace now. So whilst the visions of adventure, community, happiness and love in wonder tales of centuries past still intrigue contemporary audiences, many stories today are being retold in ways that challenge patriarchal systems and imagine new and more equitable ways for living for all. So sorry that was a bit lengthy, but
I love it.
Encapsulates, and it got me really thinking about all your favourite fairy tales and how we might reimagine those, and how, you know, when I think about the people that we're talking to in the podcast and Life Force, they're all great storytellers. We talk about archetypes. We talk about, you know, nature and how it influences how we live and gives us energy. We talk about iconography, you know, color, animals, like all of these things all come in to support different elements of what life force means and how we live with it as well as have it.
I agree with you, and I'm so deeply touched that we are talking fairy stories and talking fairy tales literally the night that my Egypt journey opens, because I don't know if you know, but like my personal pilgrimage, so everybody that had fires at airports and the health crises had their pilgrimage, but my personal pilgrimage was like a fairy story. It's so nuts, Fiona. Like, I can't believe I'm about to say this podcast. my life is so archetypally magical. But yeah, basically in the summer I was at a place called St Nectan's Glen, which is like, there are places in the UK that it's like you step into them and you've like gone from our dimension into the fairy kingdom.
Isle of Skye, which is my family's
100%. Isle of Skye is like fairy capital.
That's where my family's from.
Oh, that's why you're so magic. Like the Isle of Skye is like made for fairies, not for humans. Like, and I just want to say that like people that are listening to this are probably like, fairies are not real. Yes, on our dimension they're not real, but to me what fairies are is they're the archetype of the spirits of the plants and nature. So they're the archetype of the spirits of nature. They're the archetypes of the plants and the flowers and the fruits, you know, that's what they are. They're the archetypes of that. And the life force energy of that manifest in story form, which is how we as humans are able to communicate to other. And there are these places that are like nature temples, like the Isle of Skye, where you're like, this isn't a human world. This is a world that belongs to those archetypes, you know? Yeah. And so St Nectan's Glen in Cornwall is one of those places. It's this waterfall and you just go in and you're like, this is magic. And I was there and channeling to that sacred site and the archetypes and the fairy and magic and energy that was there. And it was so random because I was given these four tiny little pebbles, and I was told to give one to myself and each of the people there. And the message was, this is an actual fairy wish. And it was very specific. It was like, this isn't what you think a fairy wish is. This is actual fairy magic. It's actual land magic. And you can only use it for service. And you will know when you need to use it. And when you need to use it, what you ask for will happen. So like pure fairy tale stuff, right? My inner child was like,
this is fairy
like, and so then I like, you know, months later, Egypt's going so wrong. The tour's completely non-existent, and I cannot get this tour to land. Like everything I'm trying isn't working. As we talked about last time, my cortisol, my adrenaline, my stress, nothing is making this tour working, and I'm under so much time pressure. And I was just like, I think I need to use, one day I was like, I wonder if I should use the fairy wish. And like my more cognitive left brain self is like, of course that isn't going to work. And yet then somebody was playing around on AI, a friend of mine, and she knew I was struggling with Egypt. And she sent me this picture of the pyramids with loads of fairies around it randomly. Just
nothing's random.
Yeah. It's going to be the cover of this episode, I think. And so I was like, I think that's a sign that I'm going to use the fairy wish. And so I used the fairy, like I was so desperate at this point. I was like, maybe the fairy wish is going to work. So I went to the beach in Brighton and I like made the fairy wish. And as I made it, the sky opened up on me. Literally within hours, that tour landed. And since then, what I would say is like, when I was thinking about like, what did that wish do? I think what it did was it summoned the archetype in me of the fairies, which is nature magic, which is the belief in the divine mother, that you know, the feminine magic of it's all going to work out as it's meant to. You know, it summoned the inner child in me that was able to like hope beyond the reality. It summoned the archetype of the fairy within me, and to me it summoned the nature magic and the life force energy of the fairies into this journey. Like I feel like you can, you know, I feel like they are just with this magic is now flowing through this journey. So when the Japanese people are having an earthquake, a fire and a plane crash in the airport, somehow they're getting on a plane, if fairy tale style, like fairy tale style is all I can.
Yeah,
it's
I actually
like
have
we
a
are
Die
living.
Hard in my mind. Yeah, I was like, oh, it's a Die Hard movie because I just watched Die Hard last night, so I'm like, sounds like a Die Hard movie, you know, that they've just gone through. I'm going Die Hard rather than fairy tale on that one. But, you know, I can imagine there's some people going, oh, come on, fairy tale. But I think let's bring it back round to belief, which is where we started.
Yeah.
If you believe in something and you trust and you wholeheartedly give your heart to believing and trusting, then magic does happen. And that magic can be that you have a moment of clarity where you think of something that you hadn't have thought of before. It's where you recognize an opportunity. It's where you think, oh, I'll just call that person, because you've created that space in your mind where you're not thinking about the problem. You've allowed that pause to come in. You know, this is my logical moment, but, you know, you've just, for those that don't believe it, just creates a moment of magic, a moment of pause, a moment of space, however you want to call it, to just let something else positive come in, and you break that negative cycle of stress that you're in. And that is magic. And, you know, however you want to perceive that, it does make a difference. And it comes back to belief. If you trust and you believe that good can come of a situation, it will. I do believe that.
I 100%. And I, you know, on a completely right-brained view, the guidance from the fairies has always been, if you believe in magic, magic believes in you. So I'm like, why wouldn't I believe in magic? Like, I want magic on my side. Like this power, you know, this power of belief, I think is so. I had a realization once where it was like, you know, if you're atheist to things like magic or God, or you're also disbelieving in yourself a bit, you know, you're like taking those archetypes out of an option for you. And for me, and it might not be right for everybody, but like, I'm like, have as many archetypal powers and life force pathways as you possibly can. Like, have the option to be a fairy or to be a witch or to like do the
maybe
more archetypal. But maybe you need that. Maybe you need to be that hardcore bitch in a situation. You know, like, it's like, have as many as possible and let them believe in them so that they can believe in you in whatever format works for you. Like, for me, making a ceremonial offering with the fairies just brings me so much joy. It makes life, it adds magic to life. I love it. I love that the fairy, I never thought fairies in Egypt were going to go together, and apparently they go together like, like bread and butter. But, and like, it's never what I would have thought, but it's made the whole pilgrimage more magical and more beautiful for me.
Oh my God. I love it.
And that's all that matters, is like, is your life better with fable and fairy tale and archetype and believing in magic and magic believing in you? Is it life force giving? And I think it is, because I think that that's why all of our inner children love fairy stories, you know, because they understand the power, they intuitively understand the power of them and the magic of them, and it's like we were born to believe in magic. I personally think, you know, that's all of our stories are about magic.
And that's why fairy tales last forever, because there's a story that we can, and you know, there's, you know, and we can change and we can evolve those archetypes as well. You know, it's not, we can, as you say, we can rightly use them for, you know, the witches can be good, and they're the wisdom of age, and, you know, we can change them into empowering, independent women. They're not, you know, old spinsters, witches in a forest. And there's so many different ways we can reimagine those life experiences that the fairy tales have taught us. It's just, it's yeah. I loved it. I loved exploring in my own beliefs what is the art of imagination.
And is there an archetype from those fairy stories that you are going to carry into this new year?
Oh my gosh. If you're going to be a fairy tale, which fairy tale would you be? Oh my God,
which fairy tale?
I don't know.
Love this question.
I mean, I guess I see myself more as, you know, oh God, I don't know. I think I'd have to think about that. I'm going to do some research for next time and
Go
think
on
about
in.
it. I don't know. Because, you know, I'm a crone technically, but I see myself more as the kind of like, if the king was to remarry someone nice and really supportive and bring the community together, I'm going to reimagine that. You know, I'm not the wicked stepmother. I'm actually like the nice and bring community together kind of stepmother. So I'm reimagining that role for myself.
That's one thing I would say, is that we have some gaps in the archetypes. Like, I feel like it's our duty
And I am the gap.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to, you know, I remember having this amazing realization that, you know, in the so you have the archetype of the mother and the grandmother. If you don't have children, you're the unnamed woman. Like, where's your archetype after a certain age, you know?
Yeah, I'm the witch living in the woods that nobody understands because, you know, yes, I was a maiden, but I didn't get married. I'm not being a mother. And so now I'm a crone cast out into the margins of society. So that would be my reimagined fairy tale, is making her the badass bitch that's in the middle of the...
Do her now. Let's imagine the unnamed woman now. Let's name her. Create her, Fiona.
Create her.
The mindful witch. I
mean, I did play Glinda, isn't it? The Good Witch of the North in the
such a good Glinda.
I did. Played it in school in a Angus Children's Theatre production back in like the 80s. That was a starring role. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't be Dorothy. That's for sure.
Or maybe an amazing Glinda. I was going to say Good Witch is an amazing archetype for you because you do come in and have this magic of, to me, the Good Witch magic is like to bring the calm, to bring the renewal, to bring the...
And you can be nurturing without having your own children, you know. So my goddaughter Isla, who I'm spending time with here in Australia, you know, she called me her fairy godmother for first 8 years of her life, you know, and so that I fully embraced and stepped into that role. So Isla's already given me that that mantra, that kind of, you know, and she couldn't say Fiona, so I was Ona. So maybe Ona is the fairy godmother, and that's my.
I love it. And when you connect to that, do you feel, because like as you're saying it, I feel like this energy come in a bit like I feel the energy of the pyramids. It's like there's a life force current that there is a current of energy and possibility and purpose. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. And I'm looking at Cameron right now, who's Isla's little brother in the window at me, and Fergus, her older brother, and they give me this massive sense of love and nurturing and ability to be part of a family life that I'm directly and indirectly involved in. And so there is a parenting, if that's the right word, hope I'm not overstepping, but there is a nurturing role that women who don't have children, men who don't have children, can still play in young people's lives and be a positive role model and influence. On that, I'm afraid I have to go because it's family dinner time. And unless you all hear this part of this,
go and do your fairy godmothering.
Have an amazing time in Cairo. I can't wait to hear what happens next. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my fairy tales, and have an awesome week, and may the life force be with everybody. And actually, if you've got any fairy tales that you love, let us know. Pop it in Insta. I'm going to share some of the photos from the exhibition as well, and some of the passages, because they're really beautiful and thought-provoking. But for the moment, I will speak to you soon.
May the life force and the fairy magic be with you all.
Definitely today. Bye.
We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.